Hi everybody and welcome to the next video, Cyberkillchain, and how we're going to look to mitigate this and try and look to protect against it with Palo Alto Networks platforms really, because recently I've become familiar with Strata Cloud Manager, which we can see here, and I use this one because it's a lot more, it looks a bit more futuristic than the firewall GUI, and yeah, it makes for a good screen. So this is the command center, as you can see, so we can monitor apps and threats and so on through here. All looks very good. All the graphics are very good. And I currently have a Prisma accessing as well set up. So what we're going to do is go through the way that we're going to stop the delivery of the malware, or we're going to look to try and stop the delivery of the malware and give us the best opportunity to do it. And also we'll see as well where those configurations are in Strata Cloud Manager, in this particular instance managing Prisma access, but also if you were to start managing your firewalls through it as well. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the firewall, and so when we're talking about delivery, what we're talking about now is how are they going to get the weaponization side of it is very much done of our control. So they've done their reconnaissance, they've managed to see what applications are running and what versions of those applications, and then they've done some more research on how vulnerable they may or may not be, and if they can attack them in any way, shape or form, and then they've created their malware. But now they need to get it onto the machine. And there's multiple ways of doing that. A lot of it is delivered through phishing and so on, and a lot of that is user education. But it's also by drive-bys, DNS, malicious URLs, and so on. So that's what we're going to look to do. We're going to look to see how we can look into that traffic. So we're going to use, as always, we're going to use mode 44 desktop, and then we can go to our website. Okay, and then this desktop is running through this firewall here. So one of the first things we need to talk about when we're starting to talk about actually being able to view the traffic and let the firewall see all the traffic is the importance of SSL decryption. SSL decryption can't possibly be overstated in how important it is. In fact, actually, according to SERPWatch, which, I mean, how reliable they are, I don't know, but they seem to have the same figures as everybody else. They reckon something like 99% of browsing time on Google Chrome is HTTPS. They also say that in 2020, the 70% of malware campaigns used encryption in some form or another. Now, if the firewall can't see that traffic, if it's an encrypted tunnel, it can't see it, it's going to have a lot harder time being able to detect anything going on that's malicious in any way, shape or form. Additionally as well, of course, in an enterprise environment where you're controlling apps, you're writing app policies, there are a number of app IDs that are dependent upon SSL decryption. Certainly if you're controlling functionality within an application, so for uploading or downloading, you're going to need to have that SSL decryption. So as you can see, the SSL decryption configuration is already there, so we're just going to go through it because this isn't on SSL decryption. This is literally about the Cyberkillchain and how we can start to look to reduce that possibility of being attacked. So if we go back to the desktop for a second and we have a look, we can check the certificate here. Certificate's valid, and we're going to look at our certificate. I'm going to see that the certificate has been issued by 10.100.102.1, and the common name is mode44.co.uk, which is the certificate, but it's been issued by this, and that's because we're essentially splitting the SSL here. So the basic flow of traffic is it comes from the desktop, hits the firewall, it gets SSL connectivity with the firewall then gets a separate connection to the end server, and then based on the decryption profile, which we can see under objects, decryption profile. So based on this, which is our profile, we attach to our policies, and then in between, the traffic in between that's going across the firewall is in plain text because it will sign a certificate back to our client. So this is basically the profile here. So if we're doing SSL proxy and then we're doing the server certificate verification, so that's on the other side really, where we can start to control what kind of servers we want to connect with and where we might want that blocked. So we can block sessions with expired certificates, untrusted users, SNI mismatch, which is server name indicator, mismatch with server certificate, So where you've got multiple things, you might have that. Where you've got multiple services being hosted on one server, you might have that. And then we've got inbound inspection as well, which is something else. And then we have our SSL protocol settings. So what protocols are we going to accept? We can do the same as well with no decryption. So an important thing to remember about SSL decryption is that there are some things, for instance, in this particular case, I've got financial services. Let's just let me open that up a little bit so you can see. So I've got financial services, health and medicine, and religion that we're not decrypting because that very well may contain personal information. Certainly financial services, that could contain credit cards, could contain bank account numbers. And in most countries, it's actually illegal to decrypt. So then the internet decrypts is anything else. So these will be bypassed and then we're going to decrypt. And here we can see that it's going to decrypt it from my Chicago LAN. Chicago, I wish. SSL forward proxy, decryption profile is the default profile that we saw. Log setting none in this particular instance. Logging successful handshake and logging the unsuccessful handshake, and then we can see we've got a few hit counts here. So if I just nip back to the desktop, so if I now go for Barclays, for instance, so we've got Barclays online banking. Let's go for that, which is financial, of course. And then if we come to the connection certificate as well, then we can view the certificate and we can see that it was issued by DigiCert. So we can see that we're not decrypting that traffic. And again, if we pop back to here and we go to monitor and we look in the decryption logs, we can see the CN contains mode 44. We can see that has been decrypted because we can see all the decryption logs. And if we change that to contains Barclays, we can see there's no logs for that access not been decrypted. Okay. So that's the important thing. The components of this now, this is before we even consider our antivirus and anti-spyware profiles and so on, is to get the SSL decryption policy configured. So again, the components of that, are your SSL decryption profile. That's how you're going to control what you allow and what you don't allow. You're going to go to your policies, if I can click in the right place. So policies, so this is where we're going to select the traffic that will be decrypted and the traffic that won't be decrypted for varying reasons. And we're going to test our decryption to make sure that we can see the traffic running through it. Now that we can see the traffic running through it, and now the firewall can see the traffic in its entirety, now we can start to apply our protections with a bit more certainty, so a bit more faith in their ability to be able to see the malware or see the command and control connection and be able to block it. Okay, so if we want to go from here and we'll start looking at these objects as well, we've seen these before, but for anybody who's not seen them previously, so we've got antivirus, anti-spyware, and then the vulnerability protection is what we're going to look at later. So antivirus. So antivirus uses a certain amount of decoders. And it looks within these protocols for any signatures, for any kind of malware, any kind of anomaly within that traffic. And then it will take this action. So where we have a signature action, default alert, we can change that if we wanted to allow, which is just allow it through, alert, which is the default action, drop, reset client, reset server, or reset both. One of the considerations with things like this is certain things like, say, SMTP, for instance, which is one of the first ones, is some of these applications don't really respond too well to being reset, so you could end up causing a lot of problems within your environment if that's set to reset. However, say SMTP, for instance, most stuff now isn't SMTP anyway. So if for example, as well, in the log we see that there's a threat ID that we want to accept from these rules. So we want to say, okay, for this threat ID, if you flag this, I don't want you to carry out. We can do this. We can do the signature exceptions and we can add a threat ID to it. So we just add the threat ID in there. To give you an idea, so if we come back to this dashboard, because I like it and because it works really well. So if we look in threat prevention here, we can see there's 26 blocked, view threats. And then we can see we've got the threat IDs here. So we've got malware, which is Office, Internet First. If we just click on that, we have a look at that, we can see that it was me, and it was a malware threat category office. It was GitHub downloading that did it. It was Wildfire that saw it, and then the rule that it was on. Okay, so if we take that threat ID, which I've just clicked off of because I'm a bit of a clown, take that threat ID, copy that, come back to here, and then we can add that in there, and then we see straight away it picks up that downloader.biar, which if we look on here is wherever it's written is there. Sorry, yeah, at the top, right in front of my face. Yeah, so so for all this, then what would happen is that action would be taken within HTTP decoder, and we'd see that, but we've got an exception for it, so we're not going to do anything with it. Okay, also on here as well, we can enable a packet capture, and just as another side, so if we've got applications there, we can add an application that we want to exempt or accept from this antivirus profile. Okay, so if we do that, and then the next thing we're going to look about is anti-spyware. And anti-spyware is really, the whole idea is that it's looking to look at traffic that's going out, look where it's connecting to for varying things like C2C, and so control and command and control servers and that kind of traffic. Basically trying to exfiltrate data or trying to send you somewhere to download more malware or so on. I'll just be easier to show it this way actually. So if we looked at the strict policy, so this is one of the few, one of the ones that comes with 2 policies, and then we can see we've got some signature policies there, and then we're writing some rules based on what we want this to do. Okay, so if we want to create another one, we can clone that one. We can clone that one, and then we'll be able to edit it, or we can add our own. But let's see if we're going to go here. So we're going to call this our simple low, and threat name any, we're going to leave it as any, and then we've got severity low, and our action is going to be alert. So rather than take the default action for the signature, it's going to alert, and then we can capture or not capture. I would choose not to. Okay, and then we're going to have, say, just for demonstration's sake, hi. Then we're going to have hi, and then on this one, I would say we want to reset both, or we can block the IP. We can block the IP for a certain period of time. Source and destination, or just the source. But let's say reset both in this particular instance, and we can do an extended capture so that we can look at this later on. We can download that policy later on. Sorry, we can download that packet capture later on, and we can send that off to be analysed and so on. Okay, so that's going to be our mode 44 policy. Also got signature exceptions as well, so we can show all the exceptions, and then we've got signature exceptions within the database, and we can change how that works as its default setting. So it's default setting, and then we've got the same options again. Okay, DNS policies. So in DNS policies is DNS security subscription here. Without DNS security subscription, these aren't honored, so they're not actually looked at, but we do have default Palo Alto DNS, and the policy action is a sinkhole, and then packet capture is disabled on that one. The sinkhole address is here, basically meaning that the firewall will sit in between the client and the DNS server, and if the DNS is seen to be malicious, it will return the sinkhole address. And then by best practice, what you do is create a rule. Obviously, there's lots of reporting around DNS security anyway, but you can create a rule that means that traffic would have to traverse the firewall to get to that sinkhole address, and then you can run reports based on traffic hitting that sinkhole address, and that is basically gives you an indication that those clients are compromised in some way. Again, we have the ability to, the log severity is informational, so for ad tracking domains, what we'd see in our DNS security logs is informational log severity, or high for command and control is obviously, and then default block, then the block actions, the extended capture. The only problem I do have sometimes with this, which is It's done. There is clicking on and off. So then we change that to extended capture. So now when it sees a command and control domain, it's going to do those two things, and it's going to have an extended capture, which is 5 packets or more. We can block the DNS record types here, so any malicious record types, and we've got a sinkhole address for IPv6. Okay, so DNS exceptions as well. Sometimes you might get something flagged if your internal DNS, internal host names or domains stand up to the scrutiny of DNS exceptions, DNS policies, sorry. You can add them in here so that you can avoid them being flagged or being blocked. And then you've got your inline cloud analysis. So this is the AI side of things. So using the machine learning to detect command and control, and these are all set to alert. Enabling cloud inline analysis basically means that you're sending it up to the cloud as opposed to doing it locally on the device. And as a general rule, you'll find these are set as alert. I think that's more because I suppose the confidence level of those isn't as high as potentially the actual signatures and the known signatures. And then you've got your exclusions as well, exclusion inline cloud analysis. You always have to have the exclusion as well, because you will find there are things, when you're dealing with this type of thing, Palo Alto can't possibly know about everything that's in your network, so that's why we have to be able to exclude stuff. Okay, so that's our mode 44 policy. And then we have our URL filtering as well. Now, URL filtering is going to be something that I'd imagine you're going to have set anyway by default on your outbound traffic. And that contains all the categories. If we just, that contains all the categories and the site access and so on. I mean, this has been set up for everything pretty much alert for some reason. So if I was to do set all actions to block, for instance, then everything is set as block. Okay. If I wanted to change that back, set all actions as alert. If I wanted to block adult, for instance, block that. If I wanted to go on like computer and internet info, which can sometimes be, I suppose, a little bit dodgy every now and then. You could have a continue, then you get a continue response page, or an override, so you have to add a username and password, or a password. So the basic general thing is you'd have a default policy, which the default policy here is pretty much how it comes out of the box, with all the stuff that you'd normally expect. So you got all the blocking, all the places you'd expect it. The only thing here is you'd have allow. Now, allow means you don't get a log for that. So the best way to do that, if you just wanted to use a default policy, is to clone it. We're going to clone it. We're going to call it the mode 44 URL. And the quickest way to get around this is we're going to search for allow. Okay. And because it's just a simple string match, we get the allow from that side as well there. And then we're going to set all actions to alert. So now we're going to get a log for all these ones that were allow. We're going to get a log for all those. So we've got no allow categories. Now that's what you want to try and avoid. If you look here, you can see you've got the site access and you've got allow categories 1, alert category 77, and so on. This is really what you want to be looking for, making sure that none of your categories, none of your allowed categories are 0, because you want to get an alert every single time that comes through. We've got our block categories at 12. User credential submission is basically looking into the traffic and seeing if your users are trying to log on to somewhere using their corporate credentials. So Lawrence curling at mode44.co.uk, if it's aware of that mode44.co.uk domain, then it will look for that and it will block that, or you can do a continue on that as well. So now with our risky categories and our bad categories all blocked, the quickest and easiest way, there will be exceptions to this. There'll be exceptions based on company policy or company requirements or personal requirements or whatever. There will be exceptions to it. So what we want to do is we want to ensure that when policies are being created, security policies are being created, we want to ensure that as best we can, there's always some kind of base security profile added to those policies. So we're going to create a security profile group, and we're going to call it default. and we're going to give it our mode 44 antivirus, going to give it our mode 44 anti-spyware, and we're going to give it our mode 44 URL. Okay, so then we've created our group that's called default. So if we were going to tighten up this internet safe rule, simply I've got internet safe rule, and I've got quite a lot put in here. When this journey to zero trust that everybody's on would eventually mean that all these were pretty much, apart from destination device, you wouldn't really have destination device for an internet rule, but all these would be populated. So you've got your source zones, source addresses, your source user groups, the application, the destination zone. Obviously you would have to control different things based on that. For the general internet access, you'd have that. Then you'd have your applications and application defaults, and then your log forwarding and so on. So what we're going to do is we're going to clone the rule, and we're going to move it up, and then we're going to change the name. So now we've got profiles on it as well, and then we're going to go to actions, and then what we can do is we can either select profiles, and then that lets us select the individual profiles, or we can select the group, which in this particular case is default. Okay, so now we have the traffic that was going to hit here, we would now have hit in here, and we now know it's going through this these security profiles as opposed to just hitting this here. And if we wanted to, we could reset that, which means that as we go further on, we can see that our rule is being hit, and any traffic that's falling through is being hit there. So as we added that rule, as we cloned that rule in order to be able to add it, what we didn't get was the advantage of the default group. So if I was going to add another rule here, we'll forget about general source and destination. If we look in actions, it's already pre-populated with the default group. The reason it's populated with the default group is because if you name the group default, it'll add it by default to the policy. The same thing for log forwarding. If you have a default log forwarding profile, it'll add that by default to the policy as well. Meaning that if you don't have to rely then on administrators. Okay, so we'll go ahead and just commit that on here. And whilst we're committing that on here, we'll just have a quick look at SCM, the Strata Cloud Manager, just to sort of see where those settings are and what kind of parity you've got between the two. We'll go back to here because it looks good. I'm going to do more videos on this as well, on the SCM and Prisma access, because I think that's certainly the way the business is going, it's the way the industry is going. But for now, we'll just concentrate on this. If we come into the manage and configuration, we can configure NGFW and Prisma access. You can manage next-gen firewalls from here. And in fact, actually, that's what people are pushing for. And I'm sure it will work just as well. But there are some differences to the way it works. Okay, so one of the differences is when we come in, we've got configuration scopes. So we've got Prisma access, mobile users container, global protect, remote networks, and service connections. We can also look at snippets. Snippets are snippets of configuration. They allow you to create a configuration all the way across here, allow you to create a configuration which you can then associate with a folder and then any firewalls or policies that will inherit. It's really quite cool, actually. Okay, but the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at, I'm just going to drop into global protect, just because I feel comfortable there. I'm just going to look at a few things. So what we've done here is in security services, we've got the security policy. So if we look at the security policy, so we can see the security policy there. It's set out the same way, pretty much. Bearing in mind that with Prisma access, you have to have a CDL license. As you've got a CDL license, by default, the firewall will log to CDL. As we can see, so we use the slider button across the bottom. As we can see here, we've got default actions, which is Strata login service, which is CDL. Okay, where we configure our security profiles is done in the same place as well. Sorry, messing about. So we've got our security profiles, which are done here. So we've got profile groups, which are there, and then we create our profile groups in here. So where we had the groups, security groups, we've got profile groups. and in profile groups, that's where we create. And you can see it looks basically the same. Okay, we can configure them separately, so anti-spyware. And then the anti-spyware, creating the anti-spyware is the same again. We can look at add profile, and then we can create a profile, give it a name, give it a description, and then we've got the rules, so anti-spyware rules, again the same thing, so critical, high, informational, medium. We can select the threat name if we want to, but then you've got the packet capture for extended packet capture and standard packet capture, and then the action for that rule. The same thing is true of, well, it's not true of DNS security actually. So DNS security was initially in the spyware profile, as we saw, but on here it's been moved out to its own separate thing. So here you have your DNS security profiles again, and they look the same. So when we come in here, we've got the same. We've got the sinkhole, we've got the sinkhole address, which is changeable. You can change the sinkhole address as well, and the security rules contain its profile and so on and so forth by default. Come back out of here. Okay, and then we have the file blocking and the decryption profile again. So the decryption again is set really the same way. You have your sensitive no decrypt rule, which is by default, it's already on the box. So we have the financial services, health and medicine and religion. Trust to untrust, because we're going inside to out. There are only two zones, trust and untrust, on Prisma Access. And then we have our decryption settings there, which we can see really sort of obvious and very helpful. So when it's valid till your untrust certificate and your trust certificate. You have certain exclusions, global decryption exclusions. These are available on the firewall as well, where you can see the no decrypt list, which is a fixed list. Well, it's not a fixed list; it gets edited by Palo Alto about what sites aren't decrypted. And then we have the decryption profiles here. So we have the best practice decryption profiles, where we can select our protocol and our version and no decryption and so on. So you see it's very similar to the strata, to the firewall itself. Here's our wildfire and antivirus profiles have been bundled under one. And then we've got the same thing again. We've got our upload limits for our wildfire, and we have our antivirus policies there, and then we can select what action we're going to do for the enforcement actions and the inline machine learning. Okay, so that is that's the second part really of the let's put it back on that screen because it looks really cool. So that's the second part of the Cyberkillchain series. It's not really following the Cyberkillchain completely, because part of it sort of, as I say, it's done outside, and you know, we can only control our small environment that we've got, which is the firewalls and the security appliances, and a little bit of a look at SCM as well, and see how that's configured in SCM, and see the similarities between the two. So now that's been configured, that's there, and we can see that if we go along, we've got some hit count there, but we've still got some hits on that one as well, which is very strange, because I'm assuming it's being blocked by that for some unknown reason, because that should actually follow through. Anyhow, so that's how we're going to do it. That's how we're going to sort of try and take care of the delivery side of things, and then the next one's going to be the exploitation. So hopefully that's helped. Please let me know again in the comments. Please be kind. And if you've made it this far, that's absolutely awesome. Most people only make it to 2 or 3 minutes into the video. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.